Hey guys, Khalil El Ghul, Glass House Real Estate, and today I wanted to talk about selling your rental property. This is not for the savvy investor who has a dozen properties. This is for the investor owner who maybe has one or two rental properties, maybe it's homes that they've lived in the past. They are looking at the market today and saying, hey, maybe I should sell this property now. They don't love being landlords. I'm not encouraging anyone to sell a home because of the market. You know, everyone's situation is different. Today, I probably have 6 or 7 listings, either on the market or in the pipeline, where we helped move the tenant out, took care of all the punch out, the deposit issues, and timed it in a way that as soon as the tenant was out of the house, the home was on the market as quickly thereafter as possible. How do we do that? What are the restrictions? What can you do as a landlord? What can't you do as a landlord? And go from there. So there's basically 3 different scenarios when you are selling a rental property. The best scenario, wait until the tenant's lease expires and then sell the home as a vacant property. The market for a end user home is substantially larger than the investor market. And investors aren't going to pay top dollar because they know this. So if they are buying a home with a tenant and lease in place, they're not going to pay the same amount of money as someone who just wants to live in a home as a primary residence. Big difference. So if you can sell the home vacant, absolutely the best option. There might be some additional carrying costs, but if you can afford it, you will make more money in the end to offset any of those potential losses. The second option is to offer the tenant the option to move out early or to buy them out. Rental season tends to peak in the summer months, so a lot of these leases are expiring June, July, August. Whereas the spring selling season, it's March, April, May. So what tends to happen is we have all these leases that expire in the summer, and we want to get those homes on the market 1 or 2 months early. So we'll go to the tenant and say, hey, if you want to move out now, if you have somewhere to go, we'll let you out of lease, no problem. If they're kind of wishy-washy, you could offer an incentive. Something I did on a recent property, I said, hey, what if you just don't have to pay rent for the month of May, but you move out at the end of May versus move out at the end of June? The tenant said, okay, that works. They found another place to live. It was all good. And the third option is to sell the home with a tenant in place. Okay, that is the least desirable option. But when you sell a property that's currently leased and the lease term is still in play, the tenant and the lease terms transfer to the next buyer and they become the landlord. All right, so back to my original point, that market is significantly smaller and not willing to pay as much money as an end user buyer. So we want to avoid that. So what does the timing look like on all this? Well, the first thing you have to do is refer to your lease. A lease can say anything, but typically a lease has a 30 to 60 day notice period that says if you intend on not extending the lease or enforcing the end of the lease term, you have to give written notice to your tenant 30 to 60 days before the lease expires. So I'll tell my clients, send me your lease. Let's take a look at it and let's see what your responsibilities are in terms of a landlord in order to make sure they move out at the end of the lease term. Many leases have a clause where if nothing is done and the lease term ends, it automatically goes into a month-to-month lease. Until you deliver that notice, that tenant can stay in the house with 30 or 60 additional days. You don't want any surprises. So we want to know exactly what the lease says and deliver notice as required. So what are the next steps? Typically, the next step includes meeting at the property. Sometimes the tenant is there to let us in, sometimes they're not, but we'll walk through the property, just a casual walkthrough. I'll probably take a ton of pictures and try to figure out, okay, here are the things that we'll need to do to get the home ready for market, and here's what I think the home will sell for. So we try to do that as early on as possible. A lot of times in these situations, the conversations and the communication really between the landlord and the tenant sometimes is great, sometimes they are super friendly and it's amicable and welcoming and they don't make our lives really difficult. But oftentimes, you're really interfering with this other person's life, right? We want to come into the house to get an estimate on value. Then we want to get contractors into the house to start giving us estimates on repairs, right? Are we going to paint? Are we going to replace carpet? What is a tenant's responsibility versus what is not their responsibility, right? So if we say, hey, it's going to cost $6,000 to do everything on this list, but the tenant has a deposit and maybe they've caused some of the damage that we're fixing, how do we make sure that those two things are separated? Every situation is different, but we take those into account and we make sure all that's settled when a tenant moves out. So oftentimes clients will ask me, can we Put the home on the market while the tenant is living there, but not settle until the tenant moves out, so we don't have to worry about the lease transferring to the next owner? And the answer is yes, we certainly can do that. Is it a good idea? Probably not. The tenant has very little incentive to present the home in its best shape possible, stage it, show it as often as it might need to be shown. But it's something that unfortunately we just have to do sometimes, right? Some clients are just under some duress. Sometimes they can't afford those extra 1 or 2 carrying months for whatever reason, or it's an emergency. And in those situations, I like to say to the landlord, look, let me talk to the tenant. Let me be the person who relates to their situation. I have a lot of empathy for what we're putting them through, right? We're disrupting their lives for something that they really get nothing out of. So that's not an easy pill for a lot of people to swallow. They might be the nicest tenants in the world, super cooperative, never gave you a problem. But when you say, hey, I'm gonna put the house on the market and I need you to show it to folks, to strangers, as needed, they tend to change their tune a bit. Most leases allow you to start marketing the home for sale 60 to 90 days prior to the end of the lease term. If you have a fantastic tenant who's willing to show it, the home shows great, maybe it shows like staged, right? We've been lucky sometimes. Absolutely, let's give it a shot. We'll put the home on the market May 1st. We know they're moving out May 31st, June 31st, whatever it is, and we'll just make sure that we settle after that move out date so you can deliver the property free and clear of any tenants and lease at settlement. The goal when selling a rental property is to be as efficient as possible with your time. Oftentimes, we are already behind the ball given at the end of a lease term. If a lease term ends, February, March, April, May, fantastic. If we have a lease that expires in June and July, we really don't have much time to waste in terms of getting the house to the market. So while the tenant is living there, we want to make sure we have a really positive working relationship with that tenant. We're empathetic to their needs and they're willing to help us, right? They're willing to let our contractors come in and give estimates. Maybe they're willing to let us start doing some exterior work, power washing, tree removal, landscaping, whatever needs to get done on the outside, so that the minute they move out of the house, we could be in with our contractors. Our client knows exactly what he's going to spend and their work can get done as quickly as possible. In any market, time is of the essence. So we want to be as efficient as possible. And the way you do that is to have a friendly and open dialogue with the tenant. And it's just something that I think we're really good at because we have a lot of experience having those conversations, being able to relate to those tenants and understand where they're coming from. And then we just proceed as normal, right? The goal is to ultimately try to get top dollar for your home. So we're still going to do everything that we do for every listing. We're going to make sure it looks fantastic. We're going to stage it, and we want to make sure it's presented in its best light possible. So if you're thinking about selling your rental property, if you have any questions, if you're not sure what your lease allows you to do or not do, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to help. All my contact information is below. Thanks and have a great day.